Wow. Yeah, that was a silly idea.
Hi everybody. Welcome to Gravel Union Talks, a podcast series full of inspiring stories, news and events from the world of gravel. Each month we'll be talking with guests who are passionate about riding off the beaten track, adventure riding, bikepacking and gravel racing. I'm your host Carlo, and behind the microphone in Newcastle, UK is Olly. Olly, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. How's things out there in Holland?
It's sunny. So hopefully the weather in the UK is also as good as it is over here.
It's okay.
Well, I learned last week that it's also rainy now and again, but we'll chat on that a little later. We will have a star guest on this episode. For today's episode, we're going to be chatting with Lee Craigie. Lee is impossible to pigeonhole. She's a former British national cross-country mountain bike champion and a former UK 24-hour solo mountain bike champion. But her life now takes place mainly away from the race tapes. As a qualified child psychotherapist, Lee used mountain biking as a form of therapy when working with disadvantaged children. She's the current Scottish ambassador for active travel, co-founded the Adventure Syndicate, a not-for-profit group who encourage our audience to push their perceived limitations. And finally, she's a super keen bikepacker and adventurer, and is also a published author. So, wow, that sounds like a lot of topics that we can talk about. So we will carry on with the introduction and then have this chat with Lee. Looking forward to that. Olly, we rode together last week.
We did. You came over to Northumberland and I took you out on my local trails, which is really fun, despite the weather.
Well, thank you for having me. It was an awesome. We did a few rides, but the long one over to Scotland was amazing. So
yeah, it was super fun, wasn't it?
Well, the weather was
Kielder Forest.
Well, yeah, great. So I knew Kielder Forest from Dirty River. I did a few years back, but it's a great area, and well, the weather wasn't too bad. There was, when you're in England, you'll have some rain, but we had an awesome day out. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
The website. Let's talk about gravelunion.cc, the platform. What was the biggest item on the website last month?
We're going to talk about the gear for a change. We don't often focus on gear on the website. We nearly always focus on stories, but there was a bit of kit that I'd spotted 3 or 4 months ago that just looked like it was so incredible. I thought, okay, we have to try and put a story together about this. And it's called a Hanger Connect by an American company called Alt Angle. And it's basically a little tiny bike work stand that you can take with you if you're traveling, if you're going somewhere by car, if you're flying somewhere, if you're going somewhere by van, or you're going to an event or whatever. And it's just a super high quality bike stand, but it's absolutely tiny and it weighs nothing and it packs down very small. So it's, I think it's one of those things that you won't know you need it until you've got one. And it shouldn't be all about material things, but it's super useful. So I've been putting it through its paces to make sure it works okay and to see how useful it is, and it's super good.
It's really clever. I mean, there's a clamp, and then there's the where you can connect your bike to. And I like the logo because it's. I'm a huge Metallica fan myself, so they have an
Except it's not heavy metal. That's the funny thing. It's very light.
yeah, that's okay. That's a strange thing, but I like the logo, the reference to the Metallica boys.
Yeah.
Most popular stories on the platform this month.
Okay, well, this week I sent out the latest newsletter and it was entitled Doing Things Differently. And it's all about the fact that we try and make the Gravel Union site have a different focus than some of the other cycling websites out there. So I'm going to talk about 2 stories. One of them was one I did with my mother-in-law, who she turned 76 earlier in the year, and she really wanted to do a 76-mile bike ride to celebrate her birthday. So my wife and I took her on her first ever gravel ride. And the whole story was about the fact that you're never too old to try something new, and that 76 miles, it's quite an achievement when you're 76, but she did a brilliant job and she really enjoyed it and had a great time. And it was really inspirational. And just introducing something to somebody, introducing something new to someone is always fun, and you get a really good sense of achievement, and she got a really good sense of achievement, and it's really inspired her to think about what else can she do, and just to push herself a bit more.
Yeah,
So it's called Granny Graveling because she's a grandmother.
Yeah, this was a great article, also great read, and yeah, also at an advanced age, you can still be open and learn new things and have great adventures. There's another inspiring story on birds, bees, and trees.
Yeah, which was written by a chap called Ed Wostenholme, who is in charge of GB Duro, that's a long-distance bikepacking race in the UK. And Ed's really into doing things in a sustainable manner and in a environmentally sound manner. And so this rally was all about what can gravel riders do to put something back into the environment. So it was half gravel riding, but half environmental project. And they did some rewilding. They helped clearing an area of land that had been overgrown with invasive species. They did some tree planting. So it was all about, it wasn't just about the riding, it was about team building and community building and doing something really positive as a gravel rider. So I thought that fitted very nicely with the doing things differently angle.
Because I saw that they went out on the bike, with the tools on the bikes, and then they worked in the nature and to restore things and have they had a butterfly
scenery.
Yeah, there's all kinds of so that's also a great read. All at the gravelunion.cc platform with over 65,000 members, Olly. So
great.
Hopefully everybody will listen in today. Oh, we don't know. We don't know. Well, so check out the website. Now it's time for our main guest. Welcome, Lee. How are you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Nice to meet you, Carlo. Hi, Olly.
Hi.
Well, let's start because we did the introduction a bit in our first part of the show. Could you start introducing yourself to the audience?
I'm not sure I can do a better job than you did, Carlo. That was an excellent introduction. It's always really interesting to see what people pick up on from your past and what they choose to focus in on. So that was really interesting to hear that intro. Thank you. I suppose how I define myself. You said I was unpigeonholable. I think that's probably true. But yeah, I was a professional mountain bike racer for 10 years. I was the British champion and raced in the GB squad at World Championship events and the Commonwealth Games. And at the same time, I was a child and adolescent therapist, and I took young people out on bikes and worked one-to-one with them to help them figure out their own way in life. So I think those two things sort of coming together were the basis for everything that we're here to talk about today. But then since then, I've got more involved in Scottish Government work, just as Ambassador for Active Travel, trying to make safe, accessible green spaces to enjoy riding bikes, just more equal, because we don't all have access to bikes and to green spaces in order to enjoy them. So all of those things, all combined, I would say that is probably me.
Yeah, interesting. It's a different profile than just having somebody racing or somebody only doing long distance or only bike packing travel. So you have a interesting background. So we're going to chat about it a little bit more. Because you're working for the government also, but that's not only to children, but to get more accessibility for biking, just for the public, the general public.
Yeah, that's right. My role is to try and broaden the conversation around active travel. We're very hung up on the idea of moving places by car in the UK, and that's not really sustainable, not for our planet and not for our own physical or mental health. So the idea is to try and make that much more mainstream by trying to change the public narrative around the joy that can be found in walking and cycling places and instead of driving. And that is for everybody. Although I reckon, see, if you focus in on kids and you try and work out what it is that they get out of cycling, then it's a really powerful hook to encourage adults to ride as well, because we get so hung up on this idea of active travel being about getting places A to B. But if you ask a child why they ride a bike, it's not to get somewhere, it's because it's fun. And if we can switch that narrative around and talk about the joy and the fun, then we let go of all of those uptight adult misconceptions that we've got about how we must get places fast and efficiently and burn up the planet while we do so.
Absolutely. So that's a great initiative. You also discovered bike packing, because how did you do? Because you were racing, and then what's the difference? What was there a need for you to leave the whole racing behind and do something completely different, or what's the story behind that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's an interesting story, that one, because I didn't start racing until I was 26. And before then, I rode a bike everywhere for travel, for transport. But I also used to climb a lot. I spent a lot of time in the Scottish Highlands. So I would always take my bike into the hills. I was just comfortable on a bike, and I loved riding a bike to get places and to have adventures. So I already, when I entered that first race when I was 26, I already had this sense of how a bike is such a powerful tool for transportation, for adventure. So I had that level. And then it was a bit of a mistake the next 10 years. I didn't quite mean to get caught on a conveyor belt of racing and watching my heart rate and going out on hard training sessions. But you know what it's like when you start to see incremental gains in something, and you start getting recognition, and then sponsors come on board, and you get sidetracked. And I loved it, but I always knew in the back of my mind that it wasn't my passion. Like, it wasn't what mountain biking or traveling places by bike was about. And so I remember one race in particular. I'd just become the British champion. It was a race in Andorra, a World Cup in Andorra, and I was really struggling on the bike. I was racing so flat. And at the end of that race, I said, you know what, I just need to step off the gas here. The Commonwealth Games is coming up. I need to get my mojo back. So my partner and I rode back home from Andorra. We didn't know what we were doing. We strapped bags to our mountain bikes and just took off from Andorra to get home. And by the time I got home, I was a different person. I just had this renewed sense of what bikes could do and the joy that they could offer, and that I realised how much I'd been squeezed in the racing world. And that was really the start of that. So I still raced, but I always knew that I would go back to the travelling, self-supported by bike as soon as that was over. And the moment the Commonwealth Games was over, that was when the bike packing adventures all kicked off in earnest.
Because you did quite a lot. I mean, I can understand. You're somewhat lured into the racing, and then you get successful in it, and then it step by step. So as you say, you were a little sidetracked there, but you did went to do the French GR5 hiking, Kyrgyzstan, the Tour Divide, big adventures. What's your favorite adventure that you did on the bike, long distance?
Oh, that is such a difficult question to answer, and I knew you were going to ask me that. But I think almost always the best bikepacking adventure for me is the one that I've just come back from, because that's fresh in my memory, and I always get something new out of any adventure that I go on, whether it's the Tour Divide or the Silk Road mountain race or bikepacking in the Cairngorm with my 79-year-old mother. So that is the last trip that I've just been on.
This is a granny graveling episode.
Yeah, that was so interesting, Ollie, what you were saying about granny graveling. We must speak more about that.
You win, though. If yours is 79, mine's only 76, so you definitely win.
It wasn't just my mum either, Ollie. I definitely won because I had Alice Lemkis and Philippa Batty from the Adventure Syndicate. The three of us run the syndicate together, and we took all of our mums. So there was 6 of us. And it was amazing. I mean, we must have ridden 15 miles a day tops, but it didn't matter.
Having
It wasn't
fun.
about we're having so much fun. We were on e-bikes, which we did steal from time to time. But we slept in hostels, and the chat, the conversation, seeing things differently, sharing those sorts of memories. It was so rich in a way that no other bikepacking trip has been. So yeah, I think that's my favourite in current memory.
Brilliant. I've been, as Carlo mentioned earlier, I've been reading your book because I got a preview copy of it. And in your the journey that you did back up through France, one of the things that stuck in my brain was how you planned your route each day, and the fact you didn't have a preset route. It was all about what serendipity, using something that inspired you that you might see, always stopping if you were offered a beer or a coffee or there was some decent music. And I thought that was such a brilliant way of planning a journey, is just to let the kind of go with the flow. And I thought that's something, if people read your book, that it really inspired me next time. I thought, actually, yeah, serendipity is so much better than having a really set predetermined route that you've got to follow at all costs, and you've got times you have to meet. And I thought I really approved of the free flow form of it.
Yeah, I mean, you make it sound like it was an easy adjustment to make as well. It wasn't. It's very difficult to let go of that sort of controlling urge and to always consult maps and organize all your kit. And when you consider that I just come from a World Cup bike race, and I was so focused on my training, and everything was like about minuscule gains and controlling food and controlling distance and controlling effort. And there was a switch that just flipped for me on that trip, where it was just like, I need the absolute opposite of that. And I worked really hard to let go of that need for control. But as soon as I did, it was like a cascading waterfall. I was just like, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what I need. This is all the therapy. And so I was probably more open to serendipity on that trip. Then maybe I have been since, actually. Maybe I should take a reread of that chapter, Ollie, and remind myself just how beautiful that trip was. Because there was something just so lovely about riding so open and so curiously and so flexibly. I think I could learn from myself again.
And there's sometimes, obviously, you've got you've got a ferry crossing to meet, or you have a train to catch or whatever. It doesn't work. But I think when you can, just doing things because you feel like it, or because it sounds good, or it's you following a smell to a bakery, or the waft of coffee from a cafe or something. Oh, that was very cool.
Yeah, it always works out, doesn't it? If you're in that space and you can be brave enough to follow those instincts, something always amazing comes out of it, because you're just open, and with openness comes all the richness.
Yeah,
great advice. The coffee smell always tempts me, but I think I can learn from the whole experience, because everybody's you're going to you want to go somewhere, you want to see things, but looking back on bike trips, it's not the highlights that you planned that are that will stick, but those moments that you just you meet somebody along the way, have a good conversation, or see a bit of a route that you we also do the big adventure, we do a ride. That's a big event. And then I always tell people, it's not the Mont Ventoux or the Stelvio. It's the moments and the not so famous climbs that are gonna stick. So excellent. I'll bear that in mind doing the next the next trip.
Shall we talk about your book, Lee? Because that's the one of the big reasons for chatting to you today, is the fact that it's about to be published, and it's I was very lucky that I got a copy in advance. And sometimes you get a book and you read it and you think, it's okay, but it takes a while to get through. But with yours, I genuinely was hooked, and I sat there and I read 5 or 6 chapters in one go, and then just and I finished, and I was amazed how. And this is going to sound like I'm kind of blowing your trumpet or whatever, but it really was really, really good. It's insightful. It was revealing. It was poetic. It was properly inspirational, but it also was really personal. And there's loads of stuff in there that I think a lot of other people would have been very wary about talking about, or giving so much insight into their personality. So you talk relationships and all sorts of really deep kind of, it was almost like therapy, I guess. Or was it like therapy writing it? That's a better way of putting it.
No, it wasn't like therapy writing it. I think there are some personal things in that book, but there's nothing in there that I hadn't worked through in my own way first. So there's it might come across as very personal, very revealing, but there's some stuff that I would never put in a book to go out to the world. The things that I put in that book, I feel like I'd worked through enough and I'd come to some sort of resolution with, and that I was ready to share my thoughts and my feelings around them. So it was almost very objective. When I came to redraft, I mean, there are definitely some drafts of some of the stories in that book that I did work through. I did initially write as therapy. Some of them go years back, but I reworked those so that I was very clear about what it was that I was sharing and I was putting out there. Yeah, I think you can. I mean, I hope that's how it comes across when you read them, that I'm not sort of working through my stuff in the writing of the book. I don't like that feeling. It feels a bit precarious as a reader to be reading something and thinking, oh, God, they figured that out. Yeah, am I reading the inside of theirs?
It felt very, very complete and as though you had worked through things. But I was also I was amazed how personal it was, and it's great because it gives the reader real insight, but also gave lots of, I think it was, you'd got the balance right of inspiration and insight and stimulation. Kind of made you think afterwards, what can I do in my life that maybe I'm not doing quite right at the minute, that to kind of follow your lead, I guess.
Gosh. Well, I'm so glad you've read this, Ollie. There's not many people have read it, and it's really nice to hear that feedback. So thank you.
It's one of the interesting things. Each chapter, it felt very roller coaster-esque. Where, as a good example, when you went to Kyrgyzstan to do the Silk Road, and you went a few weeks early, and you went out and did some bike packing before the Silk Road race itself. And there's lots of bits in there where a relationship has just broken up, and your personal life was quite complicated and difficult. And it was describing the kind of the impact that local people had on you, where you'd meet some shepherds in a yurt in the middle of nowhere, didn't have any common language at all, but somehow you managed to communicate, and the effect that had on your mental health when you were in quite a difficult place. So, but each chapter, you could feel it go up and down as you went through, which and then you also talked about techniques that you'd learnt to help try and keep yourself slightly more, instead of being up and down all the time, slightly more on a level. Do you want to tell us a bit about those? And so how do you deal with some of the big mental health challenges that you faced?
So I think, I mean, when I think about why I ride a bike, it can be quite hard. Like, bike packing through Kyrgyzstan isn't the easiest thing to do physically or emotionally. Like you're being hit by lots of complicated stimulus, and things are new and they're strange. And I think these highs and these lows that you talk about, Ollie, that will probably ring true for a lot of people listening to the podcast who ride bikes. It's not always very comfortable or easy, but that's sort of the reason that we do it. But we don't do it to feel uncomfortable. We do it because we know that there's the trade-off to that. So it's with those lows come those highs. And I think the knowledge of that and the experience of that, especially on something like the Tour Divide, actually, that really helped me to keep going. So just the knowledge that, yeah, this is a pit of despair, and I have never been more uncomfortable or distraught, and life is not worth living. But knowing that you've been there before, and knowing that because of this low, because of this yin, there's going to be the yang. It's coming, and that all you need to do is not wish for the pain to go away, not wish for that high, because it's coming, and it'll come when it'll come. You just need to keep breaking things down and inching forward towards that change. And whether that's healthy or not, I've done a lot of thinking about whether or not that's healthy, like living this way, living for the highs and the lows. And, when you're high, you really feel like you're alive and you're experiencing stuff, and all the colors are really bright, and that feels really valuable. You get creative and you get energized and you make connections with people. But inevitably, there'll be the come down from that. And I would often look at friends of mine or my ex-partner, actually, who I did a lot of traveling with, who was much more flatlined. She never really experienced the extreme highs or the extreme lows that I did. She just stayed very, very steady. And I would look at that and I think, I kind of wish that I had that. But actually, then I would miss out on these bouts of creativity, these bouts of colours and connection. And I think, on balance now, although it's very attractive to see that kind of level way of being, I think the highs and the lows are just part of who I am and how I live my life, and I've made my peace with that, and I just need to know and remind myself and surround myself with other people that know that when I don't feel great, the good will come.
Okay. And I suspect lots of bikepackers and gravel riders go through something, maybe not to the same extremes you do, but even the fact your legs are hurting going up a big climb, but there's going to be a descent coming up next, or there's some great single track, or there's whatever it is. We all go through it, but I think you seem to push yourself to huge highs, but maybe also have deeper lows afterwards as well.
It's possible. There's been periods in my life when that's happened. It's not felt like that for a long time. Maybe as I get older, I get a bit better at sort of minimizing the curve. But yeah, I think I still get those. Like, I still go out on a ride, and like you just said, it's uncomfortable, my legs are hurting, but there's a descent coming. And I think now what I do is I try and stay in that moment and not wish it away, and not be desperate for it to be over. And in that moment, before, I think this is what helps me sort of level things out. I try and bring my low up, and maybe I try and pull my high down a little bit. I just try and temper things a little bit more, because there is something really profound in staying in the moment, even if you're suffering, and you can turn it around to it not feel like suffering. It's only suffering if you resist it. So yeah, maybe that's where I'm going with the learning. Who knows? Okay. Definitely not there
yet. The creative bit of riding your bike is always interesting to me, and you said that in your book, how you see amazing colors and you feel things more intensely when you're doing something and really pushing yourself. And I expect Carlo's the same. Whenever I'm out on the bike is when I come up with my best ideas or my best stories, or when I'm sat in an office, sat at my desk, and your brain just goes to mush, and then you go out on your bike and you push yourself a bit, and suddenly you get those sparks of inspiration, and you think, oh yeah, I need to do this and this and this. And is that something that is that one of the reasons that you do what you do? Because then you do get those big sparks and those big moments of the light bulb clicking on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's the reason that I advocate other people do it too. Whether it's, I'm not ever advocating that people ride thousands of miles to get these moments of creativity, but I mean, I never put headphones in on my way to an office or a way to do something creative. That's my time to sort of process and to think. And it's so valuable. It really is. It's almost like, I think as grown-ups, we spend too much time in our heads intellectualizing, and to bypass that over intellectualizing stuff and to get to that good creativity, left brain, we just need to bring ourselves back into our bodies. We don't need to do anything other than bring ourselves back to our bodies, and it just shifts your brain chemistry. And like I'm all of the best ideas or insights or realizations have come when I've been on the bike. So much so that I was like, oh God, how do I capture that? I don't know how you guys capture that. Do you ever stop and like make a voice note, or how do you?
Absolutely, I've done exactly that. Or write notes on my phone. If it's a smooth trail, sometimes I write stuff while I'm riding along, but
same
making
here.
Notes
sometimes
is probably safer.
Sometimes you really have to stop and think, okay, this I must
got to
remember.
Capture.
And it's interesting, if you're riding with CEOs, I've ridden a lot with musicians. Everybody tells this same story, saying, okay, if I have a big I can't solve something, or I'm just unsecure, I don't know, there's an issue, you go out on the bike and then you come back, or on the bike, it just like the jigsaw puzzle is solving itself. And that's just because you allow yourself the space in your mind, I think. And then you also put things into perspective, if you're out there. So I think this is really a universal feeling, that another big reason to be out on the bike. And people we talked about your competitiveness with racing, and racing is nice, but being out on a bike by yourself or with others, it can really be inspiring also to yourself. And that's something that I also take from the story. You're making good promotion for the book. It's available. We will put the link in the show notes. When is? I think it's published in September. Is it, Lee?
Yeah, I believe so. I think you could buy it directly from Vertebrate now, but I think the official publication date is the 7th of September.
Well, I think it's available for pre-order also on the mainland, so not only in the UK. So we'll put the link in. I'm curious. I will put it on my list of to read.
Thanks, Carlo.
One of the big parts of your life is the Adventure Syndicate, and that came about as an idea that you got while you were on a bike and thought, I've had this brilliant idea, I need to do something with this. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So do you want to talk to us a bit about what is the Adventure Syndicate? What does it do? What are the aims? How does it work?
Yeah, so the Adventure Syndicate came about at the tail end of my bike racing career. Like, it seems all the good stuff came about just at the tail end of my bike racing career. I got chatting to Emily Chappell, and together we decided that there wasn't a big enough space in the adventure biking world for women to feel that they belong. I'd come from a racing background that was just, it was very commercial and it was very industry focused, and it was all about selling more bikes. And it seemed a lot of the time that how I looked was more important than my race results. And we really wanted to get away from that narrative. We wanted young people, young girls in particular, to see an alternative sporting female role model. And so we set about trying to have an online presence, tell stories, go on adventures that really showed a diverse range of people, but in particular women and girls who could do this stuff, who did belong in this space. And it's gone through a few iterations. So Jenny Graham was the director for a while, and together we're both from a youth work background in the Highlands. We did a lot of teenage girls overnights, bikepacking overnights. And then we had a partnership with Hosteling Scotland most lately. So we travel between hostels across Scotland, and we tell these stories as we go. And a couple of times a year we'll have big gatherings that are affordable and accessible to anybody who wants to come to just meet a community of people. Yeah, we do some riding, sometimes do some quite hard riding, but you don't have to. You're there to be part of a community. And there's been some lifelong friendships that have come about as a result of those gatherings. And everyone goes off and does their own adventures all together now. It's so nice to hear that legacy continues.
Great. One of the first things that you did with the Adventure Syndicate was you did a North Coast 500. We've chatted with Mark Beaumont quite a few times on Gravel Union, and he set an individual record around it. And so your first goal was to beat Mark's record and say, right, we're going to do it. We're going to take it on. Why did you choose the North Coast 500, and what was it like to do?
So the North Coast 500, I lived on the North Coast 500 when we came up with that idea. We wanted to do something that would make a bit of a splash. We love Mark. Like Mark is a friend. He's a really lovely guy and was actually really supportive of us doing this. We were in communication with him throughout the planning stages. But what we were trying to do was almost show the opposite of Mark's attempt at that North Coast 500 challenge. To be fair, Mark had some really bad weather on that route. He probably could have gone a lot faster than he did that time. But he is one man, a very focused man, a white man, a very athletic man from a certain background. And his narrative for that was, I go out and I conquer the North Coast 500 and I set a record, which is admirable and valuable. But it is a story that we've heard quite a lot in the past. That is sort of what the adventure world is made from. And so we thought, well, we need to do something really different to Mark. And because he's a nice guy, he was on board with that. And we got this band of women together, and we thought, let's do what Mark did, but let's do it in a cooperative, collaborative, mutually empathic way. So we got together a group of women who all worked together. So we did it completely differently to Mark. We worked together as a team to try and get as many of us around that in a faster time than Mark as possible. And it was never about the individual. It was about just one person. We just need to get one person round. It wasn't about the glory of any one person. This is a team effort. And we think that set a different tone, or it's sort of consolidated what it was that we were trying to do. Yeah, we could still ride really fast and hard, but you didn't have to suffer and be a hero to do it. You know, we were just a group of women. Get it? Fast, strong women, but a group of women who were working hard together to achieve this goal. But since then, the North Coast 500 has gone absolutely bonkers, hasn't it? It's such a shame.
It's a victim of its own success, but unfortunately not just cyclists either, is it? It's camper van owners and people in sports cars, and it maybe not quite so appealing to do anymore. Perhaps you timed it well to do it at the beginning.
Yeah, I think I hope that we didn't contribute to that. I mean, I think if it was just cyclists, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And if I had all the powers in the world with the Scottish Government as ambassador for active travel, I would close it to cars. Or close it to some cars.
Yeah.
There will always be a need for cars in the Northwest, of course. So, but yeah, I think we rely on our cars just a little bit too much.
That leads very neatly onto the Revolution race, which is resolution, not revolution, which was when you decided between Christmas and New Year you were going to ride from Scotland to Copenhagen on cargo bikes. And as a keen cargo bike owner myself, as soon as I read that, I thought it really appealed. Can you tell us about why did you do it? Why the hell did you choose to do it in the middle of winter? And what did you get out of it?
Wow. Yeah, that was a silly idea. I was in Copenhagen recording a radio program, and I just got chatting to some cargo bike manufacturers. And over a couple of beers in the pub one night, I was like, how far do you think you could actually ride one of these things with somebody sitting on the front? And they said, probably take their kids to school or they get their shopping, but you couldn't really ride at any real distance. And I was talking about analog cargo bikes, not cargo bikes with motors. And I went home and I mentioned it to Jenny Graham, my co-director of the Adventure Syndicate, an absolutely awesome, incredible woman in herself. And when you mention something to Jenny, you just know she's going to roll with it. So it was kind of a joke in my head. And then I mentioned that I wondered if we could ride from Edinburgh to Copenhagen in pairs, one person swapping one person as cargo. And if so, how fast do you think we could do it? And Jenny's like, right, let's see. And it was Jenny's idea to do it between Christmas and New Year, because that's a bit of a dull spell when you've eaten too much and no one's doing anything anyway. And Copenhagen at New Year is amazing. It was such a great impetus to get there, because it's the biggest party you can imagine. But the idea behind it was, it was fun and it was funny, and I think the film reflects that. But there was a serious message in there too. It wasn't like cargo bikes are going to be the solution to climate change. Definitely not, although they might be a tiny fraction of the solution. It was, what can we do if we just take a leap of faith? If we rest on our laurels and we think, well, there's no point because that's unachievable, then we're never going to do anything. It wasn't about showing that cargo bikes are the be all and the end all, and they're gonna reduce our climate impact. It was more, what can we do if we set this really difficult goal, like reversing climate change? What if we set this almost imaginably difficult thing, and we just go for it with humour and connection and collaboration and cooperation and commitment, and we just see how far we can get. And we thought that was a really nice metaphor for how we can have an adventure, because actually it was pretty joyful, that trying. Even if we hadn't made it, the process was worthy in and of itself. And I think if we can look at our climate emergency and our biodiversity loss emergency as an opportunity to try something different, and actually that way of living might actually feel better, then we reframe the whole thing. It's suddenly not this huge big thing that we need to make these sacrifices for. Yeah, it's difficult and it's daunting, but it might just be worth it in the doing.
It's not gravel related or bikepacking related, but it's such a brilliant film. So we'll put the link in the show notes. And I think anybody who's ever ridden a bike, if they watch it, they'll be inspired by it. And as a cargo bike owner, it blew me away, because I have an electric one, so mine's totally cheating. I cannot imagine how hard it must be to ride such a big distance with 60, 70 kilos of load on the front, because it's hard enough. And I put sometimes 70 kilos in mine, but it'll be with a motor, so it's not the same at all. And you were riding more or less non-stop in the middle of winter. I was very, very impressed.
It was very, very cold.
Yeah. I should think if you were the passenger, it was unbelievably cold, because you're sitting there not moving, not generating any heat at all. And I know they were swaddled up and in a sleeping bag and all the rest of it, but it's still pretty, that time of year, pretty super cold.
Pretty cold, yeah. But also, you knew you were going to get warm when you became the rider. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think it's probably worth pointing out that once we'd left the UK, it was pan flat and on segregated cycleway all the way to Copenhagen. And that makes a huge difference. If it was a hilly route, we would have been in real trouble. But it was hardly any height gain at all. It was amazing.
What route did you take? You started Scotland?
Yeah, started in Edinburgh, came down the National Cycle Route 7, is it? I think.
Number 1.
Is that number 1, Olly?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And even that's pretty hard. Just getting to Newcastle is hard enough.
That was the hardest part, because there's a couple of really big. There's no flat way out of Scotland. Yeah, it was pretty brutal actually, that part. But then after that, I mean, you guys have got it so sorted over there, Carlo. It's so amazing to ride on the segregated cycle infrastructure. I mean, some of it was a little bit boring, but as a way to get from A to B, it was just incredible. We were really
that's
blown
also
away.
why cycling is so integrated in our society, is because it's so easy, and it's sometimes it's even faster to get from A to B with a bike, and it's also safe. Although now with all the different speeds on the cycle path, with the e-bikes and with the speedy legs, and that's sometimes a little bit annoying for every rider. So I always say we also, as a cyclist, we need to see things from an e-bike perspective and from all the ways, because there's some irritation and annoyance now and again. But yes, true. So from the Netherlands, north of Germany to Copenhagen, that was the route.
Yeah, that was
pretty
the route
flat.
Through,
Yeah, pretty flat.
I couldn't tell you exactly, but I know we went through Hamburg because we got a puncture in Hamburg. And we crossed into Denmark on a small ferry. That is about as much as I can tell you. But we can share the route if folk are interested.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun. That was the most important thing.
Oh, had a lot of fun, a lot of laughing. Yeah, we were sore from laughing. It was very funny.
Great. Right, further on in your book, there's a chapter called Reinventing the Wheel, and it's not a hashtag, but there's a phrase in there which is "Be More Mary," which really stuck in my brain. So we want to know who was Mary and what was it about her that inspired you to take on that journey.
So in 1936, 16-year-old Mary Harvey decided that during the Glasgow Fair fortnight, which is a holiday that happens in Glasgow, she was just going to ride 500 miles around the northwest with her two sisters, Jean and Ella. And I was so struck by this story, just how many 16-year-olds living in outskirts of Glasgow would think to do that now, and what was different about Mary, or maybe Mary wasn't that unique maybe that was, just how the world was set up then. And bike was this tool for emancipation of young women of that age. It was an amazing opportunity for them to get around. It was pre-war. It raised so many questions in my head. But there was something in Mary that gave her that spark that made her want to do that. So we automatically felt a bit of kinship, some synergy there. But the reason that we knew this story was because Hostling Scotland, a charitable partner that we do a lot of work with, got in touch with us saying, Mary Harvey's son has just given us the journals, like the original journals of his mum, and we would love somebody to recreate Mary's route around the Northwest. And so we read her journal and we met with her son, Harvey, who is now a friend, now pushing 80 himself, lovely guy. And the more we read her journal, so we're like, wow, this woman is so in the moment. Like, she doesn't have all these distractions of, the modern day distractions. She didn't have social media. She didn't have even particularly real maps. Like, it was a proper adventure for her. Now, like, riding her route is pretty safe, and you've got shops and resupply points all over the place. But Mary wouldn't have. In fact, some of these roads weren't even surfaced. And there was
she was a pioneering gravel rider. That's what it was.
She absolutely was. Yeah, it's so cool. And I think we get a little bit hung up as modern day bike adventurers, thinking, oh, we are incredible, we are pioneering, and we're on carbon race rigs with disc brakes. This girl was in a steel frame bike with rod brakes and solid tires, and we think that we're adventurous. So yeah, it's worth reminding ourselves that we can always be a bit more Mary when we get a little bit too above ourselves. Like, where's our humility? Where's our real sense of adventure? Where's our ability to stay in the moment? So for all these reasons, we would remind ourselves that we had to be more Mary on that trip.
Great. That's a good inspiration, or a good motto to try and live by. Right, we're going to ask you next a big question. If you had a crystal ball, where would you see yourself being in the future? As at the minute, your life has an incredible range of facets to it. Which one do you think is going to be the one that you'll take forward, or are you going to keep lots of different strings to your bow at the same time?
Crikey. That is a huge question, and a very timely one, actually, because my job with the Scottish Government comes to an end very soon, and I'll still be director of the Adventure Syndicate, but it's what we do within that and what I choose to do personally that I think you're asking about. And do you know, I've got a really strong urge just to grow vegetables and weave baskets, and I must hold on to that. There's something, having spent all these years talking about high strategy and policy, and I just want to do something, put my hands in the soil and actually do something tangible rather than talking about it. And so I think personally, I feel a real need to go back into the mountains to work with people, possibly in a therapeutic way, in the mountains, on bikes, probably, because that's what we're all about. And maybe older people as well. There's been some real eye-opening moments lately working with older people. So I hope that's a general and vague enough answer for you to realise that I have no idea what I'm going to do next, but I've got some sort of vague ideas of what I would like to do.
I think that none of us really know, do we? We've all got a small tick list, perhaps, but it's good to have some big picture things as well. That, well, maybe I'll do this.
Yeah, and not to rush too much into them. It's just like I'm getting people shoving jobs at me, like really sort of high-powered jobs. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I need this. I need the pause. I need the space. So I'm not going to rush into anything. Yeah.
Do you think your Scottish Government role, is it going? Do you not think it will be extended, or do you not want it to be extended if they offered it to you?
Yeah, I think if it was going to continue, it shouldn't have me in it. Okay. I think the point of the only value of these slightly independent of government roles, these advisory roles, is if you don't get jaded by it,
Yeah.
and you come in with new energy and new ideas. And I understand the landscape now so well that it would be easy for me to stay in it and keep doing the work I'm doing. But I think with that, it just becomes stale, and it becomes about me and about my opinions and my networks, and it needs something fresh and new and different if it's going to be effective. So I have done my time in this role, and if it continues, it needs to have more teeth than my role had, and it needs to be somebody different.
Okay. Changing topics slightly, this whole, the kind of thing that ties together this podcast is about doing things differently, and not by conscious decision, but almost by luck, we've had 60% of the guests on the podcast have been women. And we didn't set out to do that, but the whole ethos of Gravel Union is to not be the same as the other cycling media. So we've had some really interesting guests from diverse backgrounds and talking about different topics that nobody else really would cover. Who do you think we should have on as a future guest? Who inspires you that you think we should talk to? And we're going to try and make this a theme. We're going to ask each of our guests, and now who should we have next as our guest, and try and grow it as a chain.
Oh, what you say, it's by luck and not by design, but the very fact that you're asking me this and that you've set this tone around your channel means that you are designing it.
Now it's by design. It was, so from now on we'll make it deliberate.
Okay. Oh, God, this is really hard because the list is long. But I think Nick Carris, who set up the New Forest Off-Road Club, is a really inspiring individual. I think Charlotte Inman, who set up Sisters in the Wild, I think both of them are doing incredible things, both real forces of nature and encouraging women, trans and non-binary folk into off-road riding and bike packing. And they're also funding members to become bike mechanics and leaders themselves. So I think that being part of that sort of bigger cycle is really cool.
That would tie in very well with Saoirse Potty, who we had on as our last guest from Bikepacking Buds. She is good friends with both of them and promoted both of them. So that would be a very nice link.
Yeah, nice one.
Great. Okay, and then final question for you is, if we said from tomorrow you're only allowed to have one bike, what bike would it be and why?
Only one.
Presumably you've got more than one bike at the minute, I presume.
I've got more than one bike, yeah. I live in fear of somebody asking me this question. But actually, I think once I'd made the decision, I would be ultimately happier, because less is more, isn't it? I don't want to hoard, and I have fantasized about giving all of my bikes away. And if I did that, I would give them all away, apart from my Trek Super Caliber, which is like my go-to bike for gravel, for technical riding. It can go very fast. It's also just slack enough to have fun on. Like you can if you did take it on single track, then it's manageable. And I just change the tires around depending on what I need. So can I have more than one set of wheels?
Yeah, we'll allow that. It's like Desert Island Discs, but for gravel riders. We'll allow you to have a spare set of wheels.
Great, thanks. Yep. So I'd have some pretty burly tires for the Super Cal, but most of the stuff that I do is on gravel with that bike. Okay. I'm not into lots of different bikes for gravel riding. I think if you just set the pressures in your tires, then a mountain bike can be as quick as a drop bar bike.
Great.
Well, we've been talking almost an hour, so we need to round things off. I'm sorry to. Well, it was great having you on the show, Lee. So very inspirational, I think. I will read the book most definitely after what I've heard about it. So I hope that other listeners will also take the time and follow the link in the show notes to order the book. I think that Olly has bought some stock of your publisher because he was so enthusiastic. It was also no stocks in the publishers.
No, it was genuinely that good.
Okay, well there's a disclaimer then that we're all there are no commercial interests here. Well, thank you again for being on the show, Lee. All the best of luck in the future, whatever that may behold. I mean, it's all open, but for everybody, I thought it was really interesting to see your perspective on things, and also myself now, we talked about a couple of things, but in the moment is something that I will take along for my next ride, because when you completely, that's why we'll all love riding the bike, I think. If you lose yourself in having fun, then you allow yourselves a lot of space to come to creativeness. So thanks for sharing that. We will have this professional bumper, Olly, and then we'll do the we will do the outro, because this is a professional podcast, obviously. Well, thank you for joining us on this month's edition of Gravel Union Talks. If you have any suggestions for guests or topics you would like us to feature, then please post a comment on our Facebook page, or get in touch through the website, Instagram, or send us an email, info@gravelunion.cc. Olly will be answering that, and we will do our best to fit it into our schedule. Please like and star us on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure to leave your hopefully positive remarks. Don't forget, if you like what you've heard in this episode, there's lots more great stories, features, news pieces, and all the latest gravel event information over on the gravelunion.cc website. Special thanks to Martijn for designing our very own music and jingles, the professional ones, and Ruben for editing the show. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you can join us again for next episode of Gravel Union Talks. Cheers!